I want to go over information dealing with federalism. First, let's begin by just going over what federalism is. That is just a way of organizing a nation so that two or more levels of government have formal authority over the same area and the same people. In dealing with federalism, it's important to mention the Supremacy Clause, because what the Supremacy Clause deals with is the question of which government should prevail when you have a dispute between the states and the national government. Article 6 of the Constitution states that 3 items are the supreme law of the land. The Constitution is the first one. The laws of the national government, when consistent with the Constitution, is the second one. And treaties. The treaties can only be made by the national government. Judges in every state are specifically bound by the Constitution. In general, you've seen certain cases dealing with this situation. McCullough versus Maryland was the first case that really brought out a state versus a national government. And in that case, we learned that it ruled that the national policies do take precedent over state policies. So it was basically, the court for the first time ruled that the Constitution does give Congress certain implied powers based on the provisions granting Congress the power to make all laws necessary and proper for carrying into execution their powers that go beyond the enumerated powers that are specifically listed in Article 1, Section 8. The 10th Amendment is also important because this is where states do get a lot of their power. It is not specific power, but it just basically says that if it is not prohibited to the states or prohibited to anyone, and it has not been assigned a power to the national government, then it automatically becomes a state power. I mean, obviously they could not have listed everything, so things that they just don't mention or deny anyone, it is a state power, like making marriage laws and that type of stuff. Okay, and also in dealing with federalism, we also learned that there are certain obligations that each state has to every other state. We learned this from Article 4 that does cover that. There are certain things that each state must do. For instance, the full faith and credit clause requires states to give full faith and credit to the public acts, records, and civil proceedings of every other state. Like if you're married in one state, you're married in every state. If you're divorced in one state, you're divorced in every state. Extradition. If you are charged with a crime and then you flee and you're hiding in another state, each state is obligated to send you back. Privileges and immunities of citizens. What that means is if, say, you're vacationing in another state and your car catches on fire, the fire department is going to come and put that fire out. You are going to be treated just like anybody else that happens to be a resident there would be treated. The but if that we talked about in class is they do not have to charge you the same tuition. So if you're not a resident, that is the but if there. Okay, let's cover the different types of federalism. Dual federalism, this is known as layer cake federalism. This is where states and the national government each remain supreme within their own boundaries, that they don't cross over and mingle at all. That is how originally we basically ran our system of government. National government had their powers, state had theirs. How we run it today, though, is with cooperative federalism. That is our favorite cake, marble cake. This is where everything is just kind of blurred together. You get so many, different things going on, and sometimes you can't even tell who's doing what because things are kind of mixed together. Fiscal federalism, no cake, but that deals with spending and taxing and how states receive money, and that is through grants and aid in the federal system of government. Okay, with categorical grants, this is the main source of federal aid, and these are grants that can only be used for specific purposes or categories. They do come with strings. State and local agencies can obtain categorical grants by applying for them and meeting certain qualifications. There are 2 types. The first type is a project grant, which is a categorical grant. It is the most common type of categorical grant. It is awarded on the basis of an application, such as a grant to university professors from the National Science Foundation. So people would apply for those. Formula grant. This is distributed according to a formula. States and local governments usually automatically receive these funds based on a certain formula developed from factors such as maybe population, rural population, or size, if it's dealing with, like, say, highway money or something like that. Block grants. These are used to support broad programs in areas like community development and social services. Block grants are another type of aid that we receive from the government. They do not traditionally have the strings. There's more free will of how the money is spent and dispersed. So states generally prefer block grants. There are some occasions when states would prefer not to receive federal aid, such as when Congress extends a program that is administered by the states and only partially funded by the national government. This is an underfunded mandate. This means that the states have to budget more funds for the project in order to receive the federal grant money. Something that they like even less than that is an unfunded mandate. These are requirements that are made to local, state, and local governments to spend money to meet certain laws like the Clean Air Act or the Americans with Disabilities Act. They get absolutely no financial help from the federal government, but they must comply with the law, or they could be, forced to suffer penalties. In addition, federal courts create unfunded mandates for states regarding school desegregation, prison construction, and other policies like that. In 1995, Congress passed a law that will make it more difficult, though, for Congress to impose new unfunded mandates. So they do recognize that the strain that unfunded mandates do put on states, but nonetheless, they are a possibility that states do have to deal with frequently.